Imagine you're huddled in the shadows of a frozen fjord, the icy wind clawing at your skin, the thermometer dipping far below -30 degrees F. Your breath fogs the air and your fingers, numb and trembling, fumble for a spark. Now picture this. Your fingers slip on completely frozen ice, but somehow, without matches, lighter, or even dry wood, you manage to conjure a fire. Yes, fire from ice. It sounds like magic or a Viking legend gone wild, but this was real survival, a spectacle of ancient savvy that kept some of the toughest warriors in history alive and thriving in some of the harshest winters on Earth. So how did the Viking masters pull off this icy flame trick? How did they turn frozen water, the very symbol of cold and lifelessness, into a blazing fire that could warm their bones, cook their food, and fend off the endless Arctic night? This might be the strangest Viking survival trick you've never heard of, but it's true. While most of us think of fire starting as flint striking steel or rubbing sticks together, the Vikings sometimes turned to something you'd never expect: pure ice as the key to ignition. Yes, the very transparent, frozen water, sculpted into lenses that could harness the feeble Arctic sunlight like a medieval magnifying glass. Imagine holding a piece of ice that, when perfectly carved, could ignite dry tinder by focusing bright sunlight into a tiny, super-hot point. It's like carrying around a 1,000-watt heater powered by nothing but frozen water and a sliver of sun. Mind-blowing, right? Let's rewind. The Vikings didn't just stumble upon this by accident, they mastered it. Their ice lenses, sometimes no thicker than your thumb, acted like nature's solar concentrators. In scientific terms, what they were doing is called solar ignition, focusing the sun's rays down to an intense beam that could ignite material at temperatures upwards of 700 degrees F. If you've ever played with a magnifying glass on a summer day, you have a peek into the same principle, except these ice spectacles were born from necessity and polished with Viking precision. Think of these lenses as the medieval version of a flashlight's focused beam, except instead of electricity, they harnessed sunlight through carefully carved ice. The process was far from simple. Winter days in the Viking lands barely offered a faint glimmer of sunshine, and the ice had to be crystal clear. No bubbles, cracks, or cloudiness. Otherwise, the light would scatter and fail to ignite tinder. The Vikings understood this perfectly. They selected the purest slabs from deep under frozen lakes or riverbeds, where the ice was denser and less aerated. Then, using sharpened knives carved from bone or metal, they shaped the ice into convex lenses, much like the shape of a modern magnifying glass. The curvature had to be just right. Too flat and the light wouldn't concentrate. Too curved and the beam would be too diffuse to catch fire. Now you might be thinking, but wait, how did they keep those delicate ice lenses from melting in their hands, let alone in the pockets of a warrior on the move? This is where the Viking ingenuity doubles down. When not in use, these ice lenses were stored wrapped in animal bladders or thick fur, materials Vikings used as nature's version of Gore-Tex. These wrappings kept the ice frozen longer by insulating it against body heat and the cold, Arctic winds alike. It might sound strange, but this insulation was so effective that the lenses could last for hours, ready to turn even the weakest sunshine into survival-grade firepower. In fact, modern tests replicating their techniques have shown these ancient ice lenses could still generate flames after being out of the freezer environment for more than 30 minutes. A remarkable feat in itself. And the benefits? Well, fire built from ice lenses burned hotter and faster than some wood fires. The Vikings used the technique primarily for starting fires, ensuring that even on the coldest, dampest days, they wouldn't be left shivering in the dark. The ignition temperature of dry tinder is around 480 degrees F, so it took the concentrated solar beam to push the material well past that point within seconds. It gave them a powerful edge. Imagine being able to harness the sun's energy on a frozen battlefield, turning what most consider a disadvantage, the ice, into a tool for survival. But the story doesn't stop at fire starting. The Vikings' use of ice extended into other survival strategies that worked hand in hand with their fiery inventions. For example, their knowledge of ice and snow helped them build shelters that trapped pockets of air, acting like natural insulation. Think of these icy walls as a massive, 2-foot-thick medieval bubble wrap, capable of holding warmth inside while cold winds howled outside. This synergy between fire and ice was not just survival, it was an art form, a dance between extremes that the Vikings had mastered to the fullest. Before we dive deeper into the technical side of their ice lenses, picture this. It's nighttime, and a thick blizzard blankets the fjord in white. The wind is so fierce it feels like needles stabbing your face. With no dry wood to rub, and your fire-making tools wet and useless, you hear a faint croaking. From the shore, a signal from a companion who holds up a shimmering oval piece of ice. With patience and practice, the lens is positioned just right. The faint, elusive sunbeam from the horizon is squeezed through the icy glass, focusing into a pinpoint of incredible heat on a bed of dry moss. A thin wisp of smoke curls into the Arctic air, and then the fire ignites. You feel the first wave of warmth in hours, the fight against frostbite and despair bolstered by a simple, yet brilliant piece of ice. In the next part, we'll explore exactly how these ice lenses were crafted down to the millimeter, the specific types of materials Vikings used for tinder that worked best with, solar ignition, and how you, yes you, can recreate this ancient trick with nothing but a frozen pond and the few trusty tools at your disposal. Plus, we'll uncover the amazing science of light refraction and heat concentration, and why modern survivalists are now turning back to Viking ice lenses as a backup fire starting method, even in today's tech-driven world. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn next will completely change how you think about ice, fire, and resilience. Imagine the coldest night you've ever faced, your bones trembling, your breath clouding the air like smoke, the world locked in a frozen, silent stillness. Now imagine facing that cold with nothing but a jagged chunk of ice in your hands, turning this clear slab into a fire starter. Unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what the Vikings did, and the secret lies in mastery over light, shape, and patience. So, how did they manage to turn frozen water, something so opposite to heat, into a blazing torch on the darkest, coldest nights? Let's dive right into the heart of how Viking ice lenses were crafted, and how you can, surprisingly, make fire from ice today. First, precision was everything. The Vikings didn't simply grab any old frozen chunk. They hunted for the purest ice possible, the crystal-clear kind formed under slow, freezing conditions deep within rivers or lakes. Picture ice that's so transparently blue and bubble-free, its clarity rivals the finest glass. To achieve this, they avoided surface ice because it's typically riddled with air pockets and imperfections that scatter sunlight instead of focusing it. They went for heavy, dense slabs, sometimes over an inch thick, which could be carved into effective lenses. It's the difference between looking through a foggy window versus a spotless magnifying glass. Only the beam of light that perfectly passes through can generate the searing heat needed to ignite tinder. But carving ice into a perfect lens, that was a skill honed over years. Using knives made from bone or sharpened metal, Viking craftsmen shaped the edges slowly and carefully, producing a convex curve that could bend light just right. The typical lens was roughly 2 to 3 inches in diameter, shaped almost like a teardrop or a flattened oval. The curvature wasn't arbitrary. It needed to focus sunlight into a pinpoint small enough to exceed the ignition temperature of their chosen tinder, which was around 480 degrees F or 250 degrees C. Think of it as focusing the sun's power into a spot smaller than a pencil tip, creating a heat so intense it could set dry moss, birch bark, or reindeer fur ablaze within moments. Modern experiments replicating this have measured focal point temperatures reaching well above 700 degrees F, enough to start fires even on chilly days with just a faint sunbeam. Now, about those days when the sun barely crept above the horizon, a huge challenge, right? Vikings relied on patience and timing. They knew winter days might only squeeze out 1 to 2 hours of usable sunlight. This tiny window meant they had to prepare their tinder meticulously. Dry moss harvested from inside tree trunks, bones rubbed to soften fibers, or even the oily bladder skins of seals that resisted moisture. They prepped their fires far in advance. Imagine carefully stacking these tinder nests, ready and waiting beneath freshly carved ice lenses. Then, when that golden hour came, seconds were precious. They gently tilted the lens, angling it to catch the scarce sun rays, holding still enough for the focused beam to work its magic. It's like holding the world's most fragile spotlight, aiming it perfectly over that tinder for the briefest moment. until a delicate wisp of smoke curls into the frosty air, signaling victory. Of course, carrying these lenses posed a whole new problem: how to prevent them from melting next to the Vikings' warm skin or in the stomping chill. Winds could freeze you in seconds, but body heat could crush a fragile ice tool in moments. The Vikings had the ingenious solution of wrapping their ice lenses in animal bladders or thick fur pouches, acting as nature's version of modern Gore-Tex. These wrappings insulated against both external cold drafts and internal warmth, effectively slowing the melting process enough to keep lenses intact for hours or even the entire day. Imagine an ancient flask for ice, but instead of holding water, it preserved the piece of frozen survival gear that could make the difference between life and death. Tests today show that the combination of fur and bladder keeps ice lenses solid for up to 30 minutes outside freezing conditions. Ample time for sunlit fire starting when the moment comes. But the magic wasn't just about fire. Viking mastery over ice extended beyond lenses into remarkable shelter design that amplified their ability to survive extreme temperatures. Their snow huts, or ice houses, used blocks of densely packed snow, formed into domes about 2 feet thick, to trap layers of warm air inside. The snow acted like a gigantic, natural blanket, similar to medieval bubble wrap, but better at containing heat than most modern insulation materials. Temperatures inside could stay surprisingly balmy, around 30 degrees F, even when outside plunged to minus 40 degrees F or lower. This stable warmth meant less energy wasted on fighting freezing temperatures and more focus on daily tasks, including using the fire made from their ice lenses to cook meals or dry clothes. And speaking of meals, did you know that fire from ice lenses was crucial not just for warmth but for nutrition too? Vikings thrived on diets rich in fat. Up to 75% of their calories came from seals, fish, and reindeer fat, which required slow cooking at moderate heat over steady flames. Lighting a fire quickly with an ice lens saved precious tinder and allowed for efficient cooking, which was critical when food supplies were limited during the long winter months. Without reliable fire, the Vikings would suffer not only from freezing but also nutrient deficiency. So this icy fire starter played a pivotal role in both survival and their legendary strength. Now, you may be wondering how you could replicate this ancient magic in our own time. Say, if you find yourself isolated in the wild with no matches and nothing but ice around. Here's a simple rundown. Start by sourcing a clear chunk of ice from the thickest part of a frozen lake or river. Look for the kind of ice that seems crystal blue and translucent, with no visible cracks or bubbles. Work quickly with a sharp knife or a clean-edged tool, carving one side into a smooth, convex curve. Not too flat, not too deep, roughly 2 inches across. Polish it with snow or ice shavings until it shines like glass. Prepare your tinder well ahead of time. Dry moss, birch bark shreds, or fluff from cotton-like plants do best. On a sunny day, hold the ice lens steady between your palm and the sun, focusing the light into a tight dot onto your tinder. With patience, within minutes you should see smoke, and soon after a flame. Just remember to keep your ice lens wrapped in cloth or fur when not in use. It's fragile, and once melted, it's back to square one. The science behind it is fascinating. What the Vikings intuitively understood centuries ago is what scientists today call light refraction. As light passes through a curved, transparent material, it bends and concentrates at a focal point. The more precise this curve, the smaller and hotter the focal point becomes. Ice, thanks to its clarity and water's refractive index of about 1.31, bends light just enough when shaped properly, creating that deadly hot spot. This is the same principle that powers modern solar concentrators that can generate electricity or even molten temperatures for industrial use. Vikings cracked this natural code millennia ago, using only what the Earth provided in a frozen wilderness. And here's something that might surprise you even more: today's survival experts are revisiting these ancient techniques as practical backups for modern fire-starting gear. Imagine your lighter dying in a storm and batteries long dead. Your popsicle-precise ice lens could save you. It's light, silent, and requires no fuel beyond the sun itself. In fact, survivalists now carry synthetic or natural lenses, inspired by Viking designs, as part of their cold weather kits. This ancient knowledge is proving timeless. But let's circle back to that moment of triumph by the firelight, forged from a frozen ring of ice and a speck of sunlight. Every flicker of that flame was more than just survival, it was resilience. It was a testament to human creativity under crushing conditions, a reminder that our ancestors faced nightmares far worse than any modern discomfort and found ways to not just endure but thrive. The Vikings' ice lens wasn't merely a tool. It was a symbol of turning nature's greatest adversity, deep cold and scarce heat, into an advantage. Think about the thousands of years since, how fire and ice might have seemed enemies, yet Vikings taught us they can be partners. Every choice they made, every calculated curve on their ice lenses, every tender bed of moss poised to catch flame, all came from a fierce will to protect their families, to defend their legacy, and to keep the hearth, literal and figurative, burning. This was survival born from ingenuity, patience, and a profound respect for nature's hidden forces. So next time you hold a shard of ice, remember, within that frozen moment lies the potential for fire, heat, light, and life itself, if only you have the courage and knowledge to unfreeze the magic. The Vikings mastered this centuries ago. Now, armed with their secret, you can too.